All right, so we are picking up on line 259, which is where the Latin picks back up again. But in order to understand what's going on here, you really have to know the English context. So, in class on Friday, we finished up with Iarbas' speech to Jupiter, saying, I can't believe that you are letting Aeneas be with Dido when we give you all of these gifts and you give us nothing. Should we not be afraid of you? He's very, very angry that Aeneas is getting Dido. He uses all of that weird word choice. Remember, he called Aeneas Paris, actually, because he steals away the woman, in this case Dido, rather than Helen. He calls Dido rapto, having been seized. He says that the Trojans are a comitatus animili, a band of eunuchs, or a band of half-men. So he's extremely mad, number one, that Dido is with Aeneas at all, and number two, that Jupiter is allowing it. So then we jump to 259, but in between there, our last line from Friday's class was the end of Iarbas' speech. So immediately following that, we jump to Mount Olympus, and we see Jupiter, and we see Jupiter's reaction to Iarbas' speech. And he actually does hear Iarbas' words, and what we understand from it is that actually Jupiter gets mad at Aeneas as well, but for very different reasons. Iarbas is mad at Aeneas for stealing, I say in quotes, stealing Dido away from him, even though Dido very blatantly said that she wanted him long before she had Aeneas. But Iarbas is mad at Aeneas for that. Jupiter is mad at Aeneas for hanging out in Carthage and not continuing on his destiny to Italy. He says, this is not what my daughter would have wanted. This is not what my daughter said was going to happen. His daughter being Venus. So Venus needs Aeneas to be going to Italy to found his new empire. But she's also the one who sets up this love interest for him with Dido. So Jupiter's mad at Venus for not following through on her plan. He's mad at Aeneas for not following through on his plan. So all of that is to say, he sends Mercury down to Aeneas to kick his butt into gear and say, why are you still hanging around in Carthage? Please leave and get on your way to Italy. It's time to go found Rome. And that's where we pick up. Ut primum. As soon as, or as he first, but you can just say as soon as for ut primum. As soon as Tatiget, he touches the Megalia, the roofs or rooftops, alatis plantis. Alatis means winged or winged, and plantis means heels. So as soon as he touches the rooftops with his winged heels, notice we're talking about Mercury, the messenger god, whose feet have little wings on them so that he can move with speed throughout the world. So as soon as he touches the rooftops with his winged heels, he conspicit down on 261. Notice that enjambment. That's a really big enjambment because the end of the sentence is that verb at the start of the line on 261. So that's a big old enjambment. He catches sight of Aeneas. Fundantem arches, ac novantem tecta. Notice we have a ton of accusatives in line 260. Arches is the direct object off of fundantem. Tecta is the direct object off of novantem. So, he, meaning Mercury, catches sight of Aeneas building arches, or setting up the foundations for arches, and novantem, making new tecta, roofs, or houses. So, as soon as Mercury arrives in Carthage, places his foot, or touches the rooftops with his winged feet, he sees Aeneas laying the foundations for arches and building new houses. Aspect. And ensis. You have to go down to ensis. Ensis is your true subject on the next line. The sword, Iliad. The sword for that guy. Or that's a dative of possession. It sounds a lot like a genitive. So his sword, or the sword for that guy. And the sword for that guy, stellatus erat. This schema is a little bit misleading. What's probably better is to do this. Stellatus erat, where that verb has been split up over the line. What's that called when you have a word, even with two words that should be going together, that's split up all the way across the line? That would be Tmesis. It is split up. So The sword for that guy had been studded, Stellatus, had been studded. Jaspide fulva. Jaspide is jasper. It's a type of hard material, a hard metal. It's kind of a gem. And fulva means tawny or yellow. So his sword, the sword for that guy, has been studded, or had been studded, I apologize, perfect, had been studded with yellow jasper. Think about what type of ablative that is. How was it studded? It was studded with yellow jasper. That would be means, oops, pen up. Means. And the lina, his cloak, Ardeva, was burning Tyrio Moricae with Tyrian purple. Tyrian purple is a very particular type of material, and I'm going to talk about it once we get through these lines, but we'll come back to that. So, Mercury sees Aeneas basically building the city with his sword at his side, studded with yellow jasper, and with a cloak burning with Tyrian purple. Demisa, also going off of Lina, the cloak having been sent down from his shoulders. So he's wearing this cloak on his shoulders. Quae munera, gifts which Dido, rich Dido, fecerat, had made. So yes, Dido actually made the sword and particularly made the cloak. And she decrevorat, she had separated the telas, the threads, tenui auro, with thin gold. So if you think about how Mercury is seeing Aeneas right now, he's doing the work, right? He's laying out the plan for this city, but he's wearing a super studded sword with yellow jasper. That would be very beautiful. That would be something like if you see a solid gold ring or something like that. Something very, very beautiful. And he was wearing a cloak down from his shoulders that was burning with Tyrian purple. Tyrian purple was extremely expensive. These gifts, which rich Dido had made, like she actually made these gifts for him, and she wove gold, thin strands of gold throughout his Tyrian purple cloak. So in case it wasn't wealthy enough, we now have gold involved too. So continuo invadet. Immediately he attacked. And what it does literally mean to attack. This kind of means to attack with words. Mercury isn't physically attacking Aeneas, but he's attacking with his words very aggressively. So immediately he attacks Aeneas. Now we have a question, right? This first sentence is a question, so we've got to word it like a question. Now, extruis, do you build the fundamenta? Oh, I'm sorry, we missed the locus at the beginning. So that's our first verb, locus. My mistake. And extruis comes in a second. So now, do you place the fundamenta, the foundations of lofty Carthage? And do you, uxorius is an awesome word. It means ruled by your spouse. So you, ruled by your spouse. Or if you're thinking about modern times, it means whipped. So do you, whipped, extruis, build the pulchrum urbem, this beautiful city? So Mercury sees Aeneas building the city with all these fancy gifts from Dido and says, are you placing the foundations right now for Carthage? Are you whipped building this beautiful city? This should come as a shock to Mercury because Aeneas should be doing that, but not in Carthage, right? Carthaginus here is super important because Aeneas should be building the foundations of a lofty city, but not at Carthage. He should be building the foundations of lofty Rome or lofty Alba Longa, not Carthage. Mercury's like, what are you doing here, lady? Hugh, alas! And then all of this is vocative, so this whole little phrase is like an exclamation. Alas, you oblite, having been forgetful of, this is how you get the genitives. You, having been forgetful of your regni, your kingdom, and of the things of yours, and your things. Alas, you having been forgetful of your kingdom and of your things. What are you doing here? You've forgotten what your plan was. You're building Carthage. You're hanging out in rich gifts made by Dido, and you need to be getting on your way. So, really quick about Tyrian purple. Tyrian purple is a material. It's a dye that was only found in Tyre, which is where Dido is originally from. She's not originally from Carthage. And it was very hard to come by and very, very expensive for that reason. So if you think about toga praetextas in Roman society, that toga with the purple stripe on it, our penguin, Magister Senatus, is wearing one. That purple stripe was made out of Tyrian purple, and that's why it was so expensive. It was also called royal purple. This is why we think that purple is the color of royalty, because only the royals could afford this Tyrian purple. There were knockoffs of Tyrian purple, which were very obvious to anyone who knew Tyrian purple. So if you had an actual garment made out of real Tyrian purple, that was a huge sign of wealth. So Dido made Aeneas this cloak out of the Tyrian purple dye that she had, and she wove gold into this cloak. So that's a really big deal. She also did have this sword forged with the jasper stones. These are going to become important once Aeneas leaves Carthage, so really take note of these gifts that Dido has given him. So really quick about this Tyrian purple, check out that image. That is a sea snail from the shores of Tyre, and that's where they got this color. So it came from this sea snail, which is, you can see that color in the water all around it. So they would use the dye from the snail to dye their clothes, making them purple. And this is where you get images like this, of a Roman guy wearing all of this Tyrian purple. Because he's wearing this purple, he is very, very, very rich. It's a very good sign of wealth. And in particular, this is an actual piece of cloth made with real Tyrian purple that still is surviving. This is a piece of the shroud from, I think it's Constantine's grave, which is amazing that it still is intact. So you can kind of get a sense to how bright it would be. It would be very, very bright, which is how you could tell whether it was real Tyrian or knockoff Tyrian, depending on how bright the purple color was. So, all of this is to say, Mercury comes down, sees Aeneas in all of his regalia made by Dido, building her city, and says, "What are you doing here? It's time to get going." So pick up from line 268. You're taking it down to 283 for Tuesday. Please have any questions on this section ready on Tuesday, where I will ask you about them, and have a great weekend.